Imagine this. Two people walk into a pub. One earns £120,000 a year, drives a brand new BMW, lives in a nice flat in London, wears a watch that quietly screams, "I've made it." The other earns £32,000 a year, cycles to work, rents a modest place, and still checks Tesco club card deals like it's a competitive sport. Now here's the twist. If both lost their jobs tomorrow, the first person would be broke in 6 weeks. The second could last 18 months. So who's actually wealthy? Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to say out loud in the UK. Your salary is not your wealth, and once you see how the system really works, it becomes impossible to unsee. Because here's the thing nobody tells you at the job offer stage, sandwiched between the HR onboarding pack and the bit about the pension opt-in you definitely didn't read, your salary is not your wealth. It never was. It's just the rate at which money passes through your hands on its way to becoming someone else's. In this video, we're going to talk about why that is, how the UK system quietly ensures it stays that way, and, crucially, what the people who actually build wealth are doing differently. None of it involves avocado toast. Most of it involves being slightly less financially naive than the average British person, which, given the data, is a reasonably low bar to clear. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth. Wealth is not what you earn. Wealth is what you keep, what you own, and what generates returns when you're not actively working. Income, your salary, is simply a flow. It arrives, it leaves, and if you're not careful, the leaving happens rather faster than the arriving. The UK has a particular talent for facilitating this process. Consider the numbers. The median full-time salary in the UK is approximately £35,000 gross. After income tax, national insurance, student loan repayments, which for anyone who went to university after 2012 function basically as a permanent graduate tax, and pension contributions, your take-home is somewhere in the region of £26,000 to £28,000 a year. That's roughly £2,200 a month. The average monthly rent in England is currently over £1,200. In London, you can add another £800 to £1,000 on top of that and feel smug if you've managed to share a bathroom with fewer than 3 strangers. Council tax, energy bills, food, transport, and suddenly the median earner in the United Kingdom is left with a few £100s a month and the lingering suspicion that they went to university for this. Now here's what's interesting. This is the exact point at which most people's financial thinking stops. You earn money, you spend money, you repeat until retirement, at which point you discover that the state pension, currently around £11,500 a year, does not actually allow you to live in the manner to which you'd grown accustomed, or frankly in the manner to which anyone would like to grow accustomed. The salary feels like wealth because it's large relative to what we earned before. It feels like wealth because it allows us to buy things. But buying things is consumption, not accumulation. And the difference between those two words is quite literally the difference between retiring comfortably and working until your knees give out. Let's talk about the mechanisms, because Britain has constructed, not through conspiracy, but through decades of accumulated policy decisions and financial industry lobbying, a remarkably efficient system for separating ordinary earners from their money. Mechanism 1. The tax escalator. The UK's income tax system is technically progressive. The first £12,570 is tax-free. You pay 20% on the next slice, then 40% above £50,570. Fine, reasonable. Except that the personal allowance and the higher rate threshold have been frozen since 2021 and are set to remain frozen until 2028. Meanwhile, wages, partly due to inflation, have risen. This is called fiscal drag, and it's the government's favourite trick because it raises taxes without technically raising taxes. Millions of workers who would not historically have been higher rate taxpayers are now paying 40% on a portion of their income. In 2022, around 6.1 million people were expected to be paying the higher rate by 2027. That's up from about 4 million just a few years earlier. Your salary went up, your lifestyle didn't change much, but a larger slice is now going to the Treasury, quietly, automatically, without anyone having to announce a tax rise. Mechanism 2. The housing trap. This one requires its own documentary, honestly. The UK has, through a combination of restrictive planning laws, a cultural obsession with home ownership, and several decades of policy that treated house price inflation as an unambiguous good, created one of the most expensive housing markets in the developed world relative to incomes. The average house in England now costs around 8 to 9 times the average annual wage. In London, that ratio is closer to 12 or 13 times. To buy a median-priced home in England, you need a deposit of roughly £50,000 to £60,000. On a median salary, saving that while also paying rent takes the better part of a decade. But here's the cruel irony. If you don't buy, you rent. And renting in the UK model means your money builds equity for someone else's retirement, not yours. You're paying a landlord's mortgage, funding their pension, and receiving in return the right to live there until they decide to sell or move their cousin in. If you do buy, you take on the largest debt you'll ever have, typically lasting 25 to 35 years, and you spend the first decade barely touching the principal because most of your repayment is interest. Your asset is, for a significant portion of its early life, primarily a liability. Mechanism 3. Lifestyle inflation. This one's less a system and more a deeply human character flaw, but it's worth naming. Lifestyle inflation, also called lifestyle creep, is the phenomenon whereby your expenses expand to meet your income at every salary level. You earn £25,000, you live one way. You get a promotion to £40,000, and somehow within 18 months you're spending £40,000. New car, nicer flat, holidays that require a suitcase with wheels, subscriptions you forget you have, a gym membership you use with incredible optimism for 2 weeks in January. The British consumer credit industry has been very helpful here. The average UK household carries around £2,000 in credit card debt. Buy now, pay later has expanded aggressively, particularly among younger earners, creating a generation that is technically spending money it won't receive for months. You can now financially ruin yourself one £40 purchase at a time, with the convenience of a single tap. So what does actual wealth look like in the context of the UK? Let's define it properly, because the word gets misused. Wealth is the accumulation of assets that either hold their value, appreciate over time, or generate income passively. It is measured in net worth, what you own minus what you owe, not in salary. Someone earning £120,000 a year in London who spends £118,000 of it and has £15,000 in savings and a heavily mortgaged flat is not wealthy. They are high income. These are not the same thing. Someone earning £45,000 in Manchester who consistently saves and invests 20% of their income, owns a modest property with a reasonable amount of equity, and has a growing investment portfolio, that person is building wealth. Slowly, unsexy, but building. The mechanisms of actual wealth accumulation in the UK are not complicated. They are, however, psychologically difficult because they require you to delay consumption in a culture that is extraordinarily good at encouraging you not to. Asset 1. Property equity. Despite everything we've said about the housing market, property remains, over long time horizons, a significant wealth builder for those who can access it. The key phrase is those who can access it, which is doing considerable heavy lifting in that sentence given current deposit requirements and mortgage stress tests. But the principle holds. A paid-off home is a substantial asset. The equity in that property is real wealth. It can be borrowed against, sold, or passed on. It is not subject to income tax in the way wages are. For much of the post-war period, home ownership has been the primary mechanism by which ordinary British families accumulated intergenerational wealth. This is in fact precisely why the people who already own multiple properties are not particularly keen on making it easier for others to enter the market. Just a thought. Asset 2. Investments. The UK offers some genuinely useful tax-advantaged structures here. The stocks and shares ISA is, in the context of global personal finance, a remarkably good product. You can put in up to £20,000 per year, and any growth, dividends, capital gains is entirely tax-free, forever. The government doesn't get any of it when you sell. Over 30 years investing £500 a month into a diversified index fund, assuming an average annual return of 7%, which is conservative relative to historical stock market performance, produces a portfolio worth approximately £567,000. In an ISA, you pay no tax on any of that growth. The average British person does not do this. The average British person has around £9,000 in savings, most of it in cash, losing real value to inflation at a gentle but persistent rate.
Asset 3. Pension. The workplace pension is the most underappreciated wealth-building tool available to employed people in the UK. Under auto-enrollment, your employer contributes on top of your own contributions. This is, to be blunt, free money. It's part of your compensation package. Not using it or opting out is the financial equivalent of your employer offering you a pay rise and you politely declining. The pension also gives you tax relief, meaning contributions are made from pre-tax income. A higher rate taxpayer putting £100 into their pension only costs them £60 out of pocket. The government puts in the other £40. This is one of the few cases in which the British tax system actively helps you, and a surprising number of people don't know it exists. Here is where we get to the part that doesn't involve spreadsheets, because none of this is purely mathematical. The reason people don't build wealth isn't primarily a lack of information, it's a framing problem. We're taught by school, by family, by approximately every advertisement we've ever encountered to think about money in terms of income and spending. What do you earn? What can you afford? Wealthy people, and by this I don't mean the obscenely rich who are operating under entirely different rules involving trusts and offshore structures, think in terms of net worth and assets. Not, can I afford the monthly payment, but what does this purchase do to my balance sheet? Not, I deserve a treat, but what is the opportunity cost of this decision over 10 years? This is not about deprivation, it's about intentionality. The financially successful people in the UK are not the ones on the highest salaries. The data doesn't support that narrative. They are the ones who, at every income level, have been systematic about the gap between what they earn and what they spend, and deliberate about where that gap goes. The British cultural relationship with money makes this harder than it should be. We don't talk about money. It's considered rude, embarrassing, slightly gauche. You'll have a detailed conversation with a near stranger about your medical history before you discuss how much you earn or what you're invested in. This cultural reticence means that financial illiteracy propagates unchallenged, because no one corrects it, because no one's talking about it. Meanwhile, the people who have figured it out are quietly getting on with it, not discussing it at dinner, and retiring 20 years earlier than anyone expected. So here's where we land. Your salary is the starting point, not the destination. It is the raw material from which wealth can be built, if you're deliberate, if you're consistent, and if you resist the very considerable cultural pressure to spend every penny of it demonstrating to other people that you're doing well. The UK system is not designed to make this easy. The tax structure, the housing market, the consumer credit industry, none of these are neutral forces. They are systems that, by default, extract value from earners and redirect it toward those who already hold assets. But they are not inescapable. The ISA exists, the pension exists. Compound interest, given enough time, is genuinely extraordinary, and the gap between someone who understands these things at 25 and someone who figures them out at 45, in terms of actual accumulated wealth, is frankly staggering. Your salary is not your wealth, but it absolutely can become it. What you do next is up to you. This conversation matters more than ever because the UK is becoming increasingly expensive. Housing costs are rising, energy bills fluctuate like they're on a mood swing, everyday expenses creep up quietly, and in this environment, relying purely on salary becomes riskier because salary is dependent on your job, vulnerable to changes, limited by time. But wealth is what gives you stability when those things shift. So next time you see someone with a high salary, remember this: you're not seeing their wealth, you're seeing their income. And those two things are not the same, because wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you keep, it's what you build, and most importantly, it's what gives you freedom. So the real question isn't how much do you make, it's if everything stopped tomorrow, how long would you be okay? That answer is your true financial position. And if this made you rethink how you see money, then you're already ahead of most people. Because once you understand that your salary is not your wealth, you stop playing the wrong game and start building something that actually lasts. I'll see you in the next one.